today we have Brad, who has deep, over 25 years of experience in recruiting, growing, scaling, running recruiting businesses. He now focuses mainly on helping people make more money with less stress in their recruiting business. You're not here to listen to me. I want to turn this over to Brad. Brad, could you just start and kind of set up a frame for people that are tuning in about, what your journey has been, kind of how you got started in this, and so they can get a sense of you and get to know you. And then we're going to dive into all the amazing things that you do.
Yeah, Todd, I'd be very happy to. So I actually started in recruiting in what you might call the horse and buggy days. I actually started in 1992.
Oh man.
And back then we faxed resumes.
Whoa.
Sometimes and people used to, so the employers back then used to have two basic options. One, they would run what they call job ads in the newspaper, or they would use recruiting firms. And there weren't nearly as many recruiting firms. And people would either mail or fax their resumes in. So I started off back then. I worked for a big national firm specialized in accounting and finance. And I found that I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Was doing extremely well. Worked for 4 years in that company, and then about 4 or 5 years in that company, and then another 5 years for a big national IT placement firm. Met some great people, got some great training, learned a lot that works and doesn't work, because I think learning what doesn't work is at least as important. If you need to know that too. And then myself and someone I work with started our own placement firm, because that's really the way I was wired, is to run my own business, not work for someone else. And we started that in 2001, and we were able to build that firm up. We closed it when the Great Recession hit. It basically was a financial decision with a lot of debt that we were liable for and things like that. It was just a financial decision. Learned a lot in terms of some things that we did that we could have done differently. And then my partner and I started a new firm in 2010. And we were able to build that up to 7 people. The first one we built up to 15. The second one we built up to 7. And we really didn't want to be as big then. We really wanted more of a lifestyle business. And after 25 years, I realized my passion was not in running a recruiting firm anymore. My passion really evolved into helping people get better results with less stress, helping people utilize a lot more of their personal potential, things like that. So I earned my coaching certification, and all I knew is that I was really motivated to do that. And the low-hanging fruit was with companies that I was working with in the recruiting firm, and started doing really leadership coaching, business coaching. But these were not owners of recruiting firms. That's not who our clients were. And it was a lot harder because I wasn't in the right niche, because I really didn't have industry-specific experience for any of them. And it was a lot harder to market too, because they would say, have you worked with someone that manufactured the foundry equipment or foundry equipment for this type of application? So people were getting more and more like, what have you done in that area? And I was talking to my business coach, and the light bulb went on that, oh my goodness, why am I not niche where I have all that experience? I walked in your shoes as an owner. I sat in your seat as an owner. So the light bulb went on, and I decided a year ago just to niche in the recruitment industry, working with small to mid-sized owners. And that changed everything. Real quickly, started picking up clients, even with COVID. And the rest is history. I love what I do, and I'm both an advisor and a coach, because people really want both. They want someone that can really give them advice, provide the tools and the processes, but also help them personally develop so that they can solve more problems and become more effective.
So I'd love to dive into some of the processes, but before I do that, I really hear from you that it's super important to get very clear on what you're passionate about, and then to get specific and niche down, because it sounds like you were really kind of running into some struggle, and that it really was that you weren't all like niche down into where your expertise was, into kind of like where your skill set was. But even just for our viewers, if you don't have a niche, like this is really highlighting how important that is.
Absolutely. And there's so many different ways to niche or niche. I still call it niche.
I know. I'm kind of like,
idea.
what are we called? Niche, niched, whatever.
You know what? So just so that everyone understands, niche is a euphemism for niche. But no, they're the same thing. So the key there is no one way to niche. You can niche by specific industry. You can niche by specific occupations, size of firms, locations. There's so many ways to do it. The reason you want to niche is because otherwise it's much easier to be a commodity. In this day and age, there's so many firms, and location is usually not important. So unless you have something you can tell people is why you're different and you're not like the 100 other people they've talked to in the past month, it's very difficult to really get a competitive edge and take advantage of the things that really skyrocket and leverage a recruiter's success.
Brad, what is kind of your approach when you first start talking with a new recruiting owner? You know, kind of walk me through a little bit about what that first conversation kind of looks like and kind of how you approach it, just your general approach.
Well, my general approach, first of all, is only work with people where it's the right mutual fit. So the first thing I do, I'm not looking to add clients. I'm only looking to bring on clients that is really a great fit for the both of us. Mm-hmm. So I really first start with a clarity call where there's nothing to sell or anything, to really get clear of what their biggest challenges are, what the impacts are to them financially and personally, what it is that they want, ideally what they want instead, and what the impact would be from that. And then, and only then, if it seems like there's a real problem that I can help with and I'm the right fit, then we schedule a call to collaborate to design a statement of work that's a win-win. So it's never one size fits all. And it's really about fit. And I think it's similar to the recruiting industry. When you're working in the right fit, you're set up for success. Mm-hmm. So force fitting, I've never been successful with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes absolute sense.
Yeah. And just because I'm curious, you know, biggest challenges, mistakes. I mean, you've interacted with so many owners of recruiting companies and recruiting firms. Are there general themes that you see as far as mistakes or obstacles or things that seem like are holding them back?
So that's a great question, Todd. There's really a few. One of the big ones is when people start off, they want to write up any job that they could possibly write up often, because they're afraid, what if I turn something down? Mm-hmm. You know, do you place left-handed bottle washers? Well, yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Do you place CEOs of Fortune 500 companies? Well, absolutely. You know, it's like, no. So it's the FOMO, fear of missing out on an opportunity, is one of the biggest problems. I think another one is when someone starts off, usually they've been a successful recruiter already. So they think, no problem, I'll just go on my own.
Right.
What they learn, what's that?
That's so important right there. Like there's like, yeah, you think like, okay, I've already done it over here. Of course I can do it, but you've got to be very specific in how you approach your own business.
Right. Being a successful recruiter working for someone does not necessarily translate into being a successful owner who can build a successful firm. There's a lot of skills that are different. Mm-hmm. So one of the biggest challenges when someone starts off is, I already know what to do. I'm going to be successful. I was a top performer where I was. And then they go on their own and they find out it's not what you know. It's the countless things you don't know, and the countless things you assume you know, and the countless things that worked that may not work now with what you're doing. So they've all of a sudden become tremendously overwhelmed and often disheartened with how many issues there are that get in the way of their success that they didn't bank on, they didn't take into account.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah,
so
tell me more about those. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, those are two issues I see: niching and how many things there are that they don't know, and then they're faced with having to address it, and they're scrambling and they're overwhelmed, and they lose clients, they lose candidates, and they can start a downward spiral very, very easily.
Yeah, this is the mindset piece. This is the, like, you don't know what you don't know. When you know that there are going to be challenges, when you choose to work with a mentor, a coach, they're that person in your corner, that person helping you solve them, because they know fundamentally these are solvable, these are capable. But it sounds like it's really helpful to see, like, expect challenges and know that working with someone can really support you in overcoming them.
Absolutely. And one of the things I've learned is that people really want a combination of coaching, advising, mentoring, and each of those three areas are a little different from each other.
Absolutely.
And people don't realize how different they are. And I learned from experience, it's so helpful to have someone that's been there, done that. Quite frankly, someone that's older. Maybe their hair is gray. Maybe they don't have much hair, but they show the signs that they've been through a lot of battles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I actually have dark hair, but I color it this way so people think so.
Very progressive, Brad.
My little secret is out, right?
Yeah.
What are, just because I'm curious, what are some of the common things that that people assume they know, but it turns out they really don't know? Because it sounds like a lot of what you do, Brad, with your coaching is you're helping close those knowledge gaps for them. I mean, you've been there, you've done that, you've seen it all. So I'm just kind of curious, are there, again, to bring it back, some themes of, common situations of, people like, okay, I'm already can do recruiting, I'm good at it, and now I go off on my own, and then I just realize that I don't have any understanding of insert this. Are there some themes around knowledge gaps that you cover a lot?
Great question. So there's really a lot of them, but a few common ones are someone worked for a bigger firm, and the processes because the process is every step along the way to do something. And people don't realize there's so many processes that are involved. Everything you do has multiple processes, often with multiple people involved. So they don't realize they work for, let's say, a firm of 15, 20, 30, whatever number of people. And now they go on their own. The natural thing they do is they just simply take the processes they knew with firm A that they were at, that may be a lot bigger, different size clients, et cetera. And now they're going to start their own firm, and all they do is transfer these processes. And what's really important is the processes that worked at that firm may be exactly what doesn't work when you start off and you have a different client base and you're a different size. Mm-hmm. It's shocking to people how what made them successful where they were is often the same things that will cause them to fail when they start off and they're new and they're small. That's a very common one, and people are shocked because they don't know other than what they learn.
Right.
So that's a big common one. I think another common one is this overconfidence. I think confidence is a double-edged sword. When someone goes on their own, usually they're already confident. Otherwise, they wouldn't go on their own. I don't need you. I can do it myself, which is a bold statement of confidence. Mm-hmm. The problem is confidence is only helpful to the extent that there's some faith that I can figure it out. But as soon as it crosses that boundary of faith that I can figure it out and adapt, it becomes arrogance and overconfidence. Few things in life are more dangerous than that. I've learned that the hard way, because when I was a younger fella, boy, I met those criteria. Fortunately, life has had a way of informing me.
Not so much.
Was. So I think that's another common one is, oh, I already know how to do that. I don't need anyone's help. I can figure this out. And what I tell people is, okay, you may be able to figure it out. But if it takes you 3 or 4 extra years and a lot of pain and loss and cost from what it would be if you got qualified help, is that wise? And the other thing is, you may not succeed. You may go out of business. And that costs you a lot of money, a lot of confidence, a lot of, potentially broken relationships and liabilities. A lot of people go out of business that were very successful working for someone else. So those are two very common things. It's just believing that you have the answers and you've got it figured out. I don't care if you've been successful for 5 years, very successful. Never assume that you got it figured out, because you really don't. You have it figured out to a certain level, and things change a lot.
So what I'm really hearing from that is that it's super important to not just take the processes you already know and just implement, just like lay them over, and instead to really be open to getting that. Like when you're small, when you're starting out as a recruiter, what worked for like a giant company isn't going to work on your level. There might be some nuggets from there that you can keep and take into place, but not all of it. And that really that outside mentorship, that outside coaching, that outside support can really help you figure out which processes aren't working. Is there like any, like, because we're talking a lot about processes, and I think this is super important, because this is kind of how you streamline things. This is how you grow. This is how you leverage and start to scale. Are there any ones that you're like, these ones are really key, these ones are really important? Is it about streamlining? Is it about, like, what is it about exactly?
Great question. Processes encompass just about everything you can think about. Every day in your life, you have a process for things. And often it's so many steps with multiple people involved, you don't even think about it. So I wouldn't say there's any specific key process. I think the important thing is, what is the smartest, most efficient and effective process for what I'm doing? And keep on tweaking it, because whatever you do, even if it worked perfectly to start with, which it won't, but let's say it did, you didn't anticipate this thing that happened that you never planned on, and now you've got to tweak it. So I think you're always really important to look at your processes. Anytime something doesn't go right is an opportunity to say, how could I prevent that in the future? If you have things that are blowing up, that are fires, that things that don't go your way, and you're not asking the question, what can I learn from that? How do I change this process? How do I tweak this so that if this happened again, I would not have the same result? I would get the outcome I wanted. Processes evolve. If your processes aren't constantly evolving when things happen that don't go your way, you're not learning, you're not evolving, you're actually falling behind, even though you may not know it for a while.
Yeah, and to go deeper on this, Brad, because you deal with this so much. Can you give us just a story or an example? I mean, you can leave the name of the firm out or the name of the person, and just kind of give us an example of, where this has gone right and where it's gone wrong.
Okay. So one example that just comes to the top of my mind is, and again, it's based on how someone was trained. You have someone that's cold calling and they came from a firm that they really hit on all the calls you made. And maybe they picked up some clients, but they were just brainwashed into that's the way to do it. And based on the evidence that I've seen over the last 10 plus years, cold calling is just a poor return on investment in most cases. There may be some exceptions. It's very hard to actually get a hold of people and drive that into good business. So a process might be to start with LinkedIn as the basis, and think in terms of marketing and developing awareness and being seen as an expert.
Oh, that's so good.
Then people do that, but then they don't realize it's not about connecting with someone and saying, hey, you want to talk? I want to see if I can work with you. So then they realize that process of just connecting with people and reaching out to them on LinkedIn from there is not effective. So then I have a client that was doing that, and they tweaked the process to where they use LinkedIn simply as a way to develop relationships where people wanted to work with them. And then they tried to set up meetings with people that already wanted to work with them because they were providing information of value. So that's an example where the process was tweaked, first from cold calling, then to LinkedIn, but then using LinkedIn in a way that they weren't what I call connect and pounce approach.
Oh, I like your label for that too, because it is kind of like that.
Social media companies teach people connect and pounce.
Which is
I haven't seen that be effective.
No, because like I've never seen that be effective, because ultimately for me, like, it's connect and it's create connection, provide value, because immediately, it's so funny we're talking about this. I opened Facebook Messenger today and I had a message request with like just a total sell. like right from the get-go. And I thought, I don't even know you. You don't, and I literally read the message and I was like, this isn't even like what I do. So like, not only are you talking to the wrong person, but like, it's just, I'm so put off by that.
And the recruiters don't like it when someone's connecting with them to sell them something either. That's the thing. So just think about it, how you feel and how effective it is. So that's an example of a process being tweaked that makes all the difference in the world. And I have numerous examples, but I'm just thinking of one individual in particular. But I got to tell you, there's big name social media companies that are using that approach, and that people are paying good money and hiring these companies that are telling them this is what you do, even though they're finding so many people. It's not, if you reach out to 1,000 people, some of them are going to give you a positive response. But how many people are you alienating that you would have been able to do business with over time if you had a different approach? That's what I'm more concerned about.
Right. The money left on the table. Exactly.
Right. Because when you alienate someone, it's a lot harder to ever get back in.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think people think about that enough. And I was talking to someone about it yesterday, how, cold calling, it's like, I've never gotten a cold call and been like, yay, I'm so excited, I got a cold call, and it's like, how many people are you turning off in your process, where it's like, if you just kind of invested in, your marketing and your exposure and providing as much value, that those seeds would eventually germinate into a mature client, instead of, you're just cutting them all off at the root and not even giving them a chance to grow.
Right. Because what I learned is, if I do something nice, a month later, that person may remember me. Mm-hmm. But if that person is upset 2 years later, they will remember me.
Yeah. And not in the way I want to be remembered.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I have learned the negative interaction is very well remembered for a long time. The positive one has a very short life in most cases. So that's why you've got to be real careful.
Yeah. And just one kind of last question for you, Brad, because I can feel your energy here. What do you find most rewarding? You're at a point in your career now where you've made plenty of money doing recruiting, and at this point you're teaching, coaching, advising, mentoring, consulting. What do you find, most rewarding? What makes Brad do what Brad is doing?
I would say being able to connect with individuals and experience the excitement and the personal growth and the confidence that they develop as they learn, improve their skills, improve their knowledge, and personally grow, so that they can handle a lot more of the challenges that life brings and adapt to the difficulties that you will get. And when you're more successful, you get different difficulties. It's not that you get less.
Yeah, I love
that
it.
ability to adapt and thrive in a world of constant change, often unpredictable change. That's the other thing. Change, some of it's predictable, but so much of it is unpredictable. How many of us predicted COVID?
No.
I mean, I had hired 2 people 30 days before COVID. So, like at this point, it was just there was some, news on it, but it didn't really see, so it's completely impossible to predict that.
So that's why it's so important to adapt to unexpected as a personal development issue, rather than to plan for the likely. You need to do both, but where people get tripped up the most is adapting to the unexpected. Yeah. But opportunities lie there also.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you have a free gift for our audience, and I know, because like what we have connected over and talked about is that really that it's very specific. Like when you had mentioned, like, we've even got to connect and see what's really going on. You really take a 360-degree view of each business to really target, pinpoint, and then create like improvements and tweaks within processes. So I know you have a free gift to kind of support kind of like a little bit of this. Will you share with us what that is?
Yes. I have a gift. I call it the business optimization process for recruiting firms. And the key here is I draw on the experience that I've had over the years in the industry and take what I would consider pretty much a 360-degree view of all the elements that are critical to success in the business, so that a person can make sure and be aware of what they're doing or not doing in each of these areas. So it gives you you can get a 360-degree inventory, so you can build on the things that you are doing well, but you can also address the things you're not doing well that sometimes you didn't know about, sometimes you're putting it off. Sometimes when you really looked at it, you're like, wow, what I'm doing isn't working. So that awareness allows you to specifically identify and not get overwhelmed because you're thinking of all these things that aren't working.
Y'all, that's amazing. To access Brad's free gift, just scroll below, click the button, it'll take you straight there. And like really just imagine what's possible for you when you gain awareness of what's going to get in the way of what your challenges are, because awareness is always that first key step to creating the change that you need. Your success is paramount to this. And Brad, what would you say like the biggest takeaway or the number one thing you really want to leave our audience with?
I would say the number one thing is to keep on going back to that beginner's mind. That mind of if I look at how much I know, or any human being knows, it grows. Hopefully it grows. It doesn't have to, but hopefully it grows. But to always realize the sphere, if you were looking at it as a sphere of your knowledge, is like this, but the sphere of what you don't know, even in the field that you're in, is way bigger, no matter how much you know. And to always say, I'm more concerned about what I don't know than I am about what I do know. I value learning what I don't know. And if, let's say for sake of argument, today you knew everything there is to know about what you're doing. Tomorrow you won't, because things change. So if you're not constantly learning and adapting, because whatever you do that works now, it will not keep working in the same form you're doing it. I guarantee it, whether it's a year, 2 years, 3 years, it will not keep working the same way. So if you're not constantly looking at it and tweaking it based on where it's falling short, you are falling behind. So the biggest thing is that always, how can I improve? How can I develop? How can I solve these problems that are getting in the way is so key. It's a humility of, I know nothing is wise to start